I'm Chris Watts, the Enrollment Success Coordinator for the Financial Planning Certificate Program. One of our instructors and sponsors for this program, Kenneth Price, will go over this slide deck. So appreciate you joining once again, and I'll turn it now over to Ken to start tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Chris. And again, welcome to all of you for taking this time to find out about our program. We'll cover the University of Texas, their financial planning certificate program, give you some information at the very beginning on the profession itself for the first half, and then the second half of this presentation, look at what UT has to offer in regards to this presentation. The slide deck that we are going to cover, as Chris Watts has shared, you'll have access to all of these. So what I want to first talk about is the professional opportunities that you have within the financial planning industry. This slide deck, or this particular slide here, brings out research that they do every year from the Employee Benefit Research Institute. And every year I try to update it, but the same theme rolls throughout each of the different slides or the research. And that is that people feel very uh, unprepared for retirement. On that first slide, you see it's consistent with last year, 7 out of 10. They say that they have confidence to live comfortably, but then when you look at the numbers, they haven't done the math or the calculations to figure out will they be comfortable for retirement. And what happens is a lot of people tend to have to make some adjustments or changes because they realize that their game plan is not going to work. And that's where we come in as financial planners. I've been in this profession for since 1997, so more than 2 decades. And I actually started in the profession. I got my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. And so we get a lot of our students who are career switchers. And so I can speak to that for those of you coming from a different career who are already doing something else. Like I said, my background is electrical engineering, and decided to make a full-time switch to this in 1996. I work at a fee-only financial or fee-based financial planning firm. The only compensation that I get is fees directly from clients. I don't sell commissionable products or anything. But when I first started the profession in 97, 96, I was actually working at a full service brokerage firm. So that was all straight commission. Then worked at a fee only and now at a fee base. So I can speak to all the different ways to work in this profession. Well, I say all the ways that I've done it. I can definitely speak to you in that regard. But I've been, like I said, doing this, made the change in 96, and I've never looked back. I absolutely love the profession. There's definitely a need for us. The information for financial planning is out there, but for most clients, it gets to be overwhelming. I was working with even, for instance, the last few days with our operations staff on making sure that my clients get their required minimum distributions, the amount that the IRS stipulates that they need to take out of their inherited IRAs and certain IRAs if they're over age 70, 73, the age has changed. That gets confusing for some people because usually it's based on life expectancy. However, with inherited IRAs, there's required minimum distributions that the IRS stipulates clients have to take money out and be taxed on that. Those accounts, the inherited IRAs, they were received after 2000, which was the Secure Act, they've got to be totally distributed by 10 years. So they don't have a lifetime to draw money out. They've got 10 years. And so some people are on the old rules, some people are on the new rules. And as planners, it's, our job to, of course, know those types of things. So all that to say that amongst all of these different sources, and of course, plenty of others, whether it's Kiplinger's Personal Finance Magazine or it's podcast, the information is out there, but it's overwhelming and trying to decide what's applicable to me as an investor, as a consumer. One of the ways that you and I can differentiate ourselves in this space as a financial advisor is by getting the CFP certification. I'll go over the numbers of how many uh, have the certification, but just know that as far as financial advisors out there, there's more than, I think the last time I looked, there was about 800,000, but that was a while ago. And so I'm sure it's a lot more now. Getting the CFP designation is one way that you and I get to differentiate ourselves from others in the profession. The CFP designation is given by or earned through the CFP board, of course, not through UT. The demand is definitely there. When they did the research with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, they say that the demand for it is expected to grow faster than average at a rate of 13% through 2032. And one reason that they cite for this is the transfer of wealth that we're already seeing happen. And I know that I experience it in my profession as uh, heirs are, as a matter of fact, this past year, I had to open accounts for one of my clients, wanted to gift money to their daughters. And so we opened accounts and got them set up to continue to build the wealth that their parents had built. The benefits of becoming a CFP professional, um, I would say first and foremost is the satisfaction that people in the profession have of helping people. We get to make a very tangible difference in people's lives, solving different things. One of the things that you run into a lot as a financial planner is that people are overwhelmed, it's intimidating, and it's stressful taking care of their finances. Some weren't taught by their parents. Some didn't have the background of maybe a economics degree or finance or studied any of financial planning. And so they feel maybe embarrassed about how things have been put together. And we get to help them get on the right path and make sure that they're ultimately pursuing the goals that they have for their families. The compensation is, of course, good as you see here in the slide. Experienced financial advisors says here that they earn on average 192,000 a year. Obviously, that wouldn't be where most people would start, but it's definitely a way to make a good, honest living. And the CFP certification, 76% say that it's directly contributed to their success as a financial advisor. And if you've probably figured out by now, I mentioned that there's a lot of financial advisors out there, but you don't necessarily have to have the CFP certification to be a financial advisor. So, more than, well, that's three quarters actually, say that getting that certification has directly contributed to their success. I know for a fact it's helped me because I came into the profession. I didn't have this background. Like I said, I was an electrical engineering major. And so I took the CFP courses and tested and courses. You saw from the opening slide, I did a whole bunch of other designations as well as time passed. In the profession, of course, you get to build your future by helping others build theirs. When I got into the profession, I didn't know how much counseling and coaching this profession entailed. I was comfortable, of course, with the problem solving, figuring things out, looking at all of the tax legislation and figuring out how it applies to clients. But there's a lot of counseling and coaching involved in being a financial planner because ultimately what you are doing with the knowledge base that you have is behavior modification for your clients and prospects. So, as a CFP professional, you're committing yourself to working in your clients' best interests. And this is different than financial advisors usually have the what's called the suitability standard. When you get into the profession, if you don't have the CFP certification, what some will end up doing is getting the Series 7 or the Series 63, the Series 65, all of those which I had at one point in time. The standard for working with a client as a financial advisor in that capacity is making sure that what products you bring to the client or prospect, those products are suitable. The CFP board says, well, we're going to operate at a higher standard. And it's not just a matter of are you bringing things that are suitable to the client, but are you bringing things to the client that's in their best interest? And they call that the fiduciary standard, that you're working in their best interest. So I mentioned that there are more than 800,000 financial advisors out there. This breaks down, well, how many have the CFP certification? There's 106,000. The CFP board actually had a year, I believe, ago celebration for because they just crossed 100,000. So they're at 106,000, and it's predominantly male, which is a great opportunity for females because the client makeup for most advisors' book of business is not 76% male. There's a lot of female clients who, of course, may want female advisors. And so a huge opportunity for women. Also, a huge opportunity for young folks getting into the profession because a lot of advisors who've been doing this for quite a while are retiring and looking to transition their book of business. I just a couple months ago worked with an advisor at our firm who is was transitioning clients to me and others because they're retiring. As a matter of fact, and I hopefully have it on my calendar, next week, there's a retirement party for him. He's been doing this for quite a while, and it was part of his succession plan, excuse me, in working with clients to get them um, situated with the most appropriate advisor. I was listening to a podcast about a week ago. Another advisor, he was on a financial podcast and talking about how he got into the profession. It wasn't well, I was going to say it wasn't a financial podcast. It wasn't his financial podcast. He was just giving a testimony of how he got into the profession, that he had bought a practice from someone who was retiring, got the certifications and so forth. So there's definitely an opportunity there for you to work with someone and potentially take over their practice. There's what the CFP board calls the 4 E's that are requirements to get the certification. There's education, examination, experience, and ethics. And what we're going to do is go through each of these, starting with education. There's two parts to it, part one and part two. So, part one, they say in order to meet this requirement, you'll have to go through and complete a college or university level coursework through a CFP Board registered program. That's where the University of Texas steps in by providing, we are a CFP Board registered program. As a matter of fact, I believe it was a few months ago, we had to do the recertification process and respond to some questions that they had about our program, turned all of that in. And of course, we've been doing that for, uh, uh, I don't even remember how long the program's been around, but I've been here since almost the beginning, and I've been here since I think 20, I want to say 2013. The areas of financial planning areas that they look towards or test on is the professional conduct and regulation, general principles of financial planning, risk management and insurance planning, investment planning, tax planning, and so forth. Um, the part two is, let's say in part one that you have some background in any of these areas. Well, we'll jump into that. What they say is in order to meet this educational requirement, you've got to hold a bachelor degree or higher to fulfill that second part. And that can be in any discipline. So if you're a liberal arts major or electrical engineering, like I was, as long as you have a bachelor's degree, that meets the second part of the education requirement. And that degree, you don't have to have started it when you take the program. It just has to be within 5 years after you pass the CFP board exam. You heard me list through some of these topic areas. Here's the complete list that was on the other slide, but what's added here is the weighting that you'll see on the CFP board exam of those topic areas. So, professional and conduct and regulation, for instance, there's 8% of the exam that covers that. The CFP board exam is what I'm talking about. For estate planning, there's 10% of the CFP board exam that covers that. The CFP board also offers accelerated path to getting the credentials. And what this simply means is if you have any of these designations or certifications, like you're a CPA or you're a chartered financial analyst or you have you're a licensed attorney, then you don't have to sit through all of the topic area or go through the full registered program. You can simply take courses that you want to prepare for the CFP board exam. So, for instance, a CPA coming through our program that does personal income taxes and has been doing it for quite a while, they may decide, you know what, I don't need to take income tax planning because I'm very well versed in it, but I don't feel as comfortable with insurance, or I don't feel as comfortable with estate planning. You most certainly can do that. And so here's all of the different credentials that the CFP board recognizes if you want to go through the accelerated path of getting the credentials. Those are the major planning areas that are on this slide. If you realize and say, you know what, I've got an economics degree and we took two courses in investments planning, so do I really need to go through and take investment planning through UT or any other program? What you can do is go to the CFP board and say, look, here's my syllabus for the investment planning courses that I took, and you can get that reviewed, and they can determine if that meets their criteria for investment planning. You can do the same for, of course, any of the other courses like insurance or estate, if you will. So that's done by the UT, excuse me, the CFP board, the transcript review. So the second E, remember we just went over education. The second E is the exam. The exam is done over or three times throughout the year in March, July, and November, and it's encompassing 170 multiple choice questions, of which I outlined what percentage from each specific area. And so 170 multiple choice. The nice thing about it is it's much different than when I took it. Before I took it, it was 10 hours, a 10-hour exam. Now it's 6-hour exam, and it's done in just three chunks. You have a 3-hour session, lunch, then another 3-hour session. So it's 6 hours, and you can take it during those specific periods. It's done over an 8-day period, and you can set up whatever time is convenient for you at a Prometric testing center. I want to talk about the experience requirement. On your slides, this is actually a link. So hopefully you can see, I put my cursor over, you can see where the link takes you. I'm just going to click there and hopefully it'll open. So this gives you, it's there directly from the CFP board. How do you go about meeting this experience requirement? Well, there's two ways. On the left side is the standard pathway, and on the right side is a new pathway that they introduced maybe a few years ago. That is the apprenticeship pathway that allows you to get the experience requirement faster. So let's start with the left side. Both of them are based on a 40-hour work week. There's 6,000 hours required on the left, and that's the standard pathway. And what it simply requires is for you to be doing one or more of those five things. So either directly interacting and engaging with clients, supervising financial planners or the financial planning process, supporting a financial planner, or teaching financial planning related courses, or completing an internship or FPA residency program. The FPA residency program, the FPA part of that stands for Financial Planning Association, and there's about a half dozen colleges that offer this through the FPA. You go for a 40-hour week course, and it's an intense uh, working with financial planners, putting together financial plans, doing presentations. For that, they give you, I think it's 6 months worth of credit or hours. So one of those five, and you're either analyzing and addressing client situations, identifying and helping them prioritize goals, analyzing actions, developing recommendations, presenting those recommendations, helping them implement, or monitoring those goals and recommendations for the client. So any of those things can help you meet the 6,000 hour requirement. On the right side is if you are directly working with a financial planner as an apprenticeship. So 2,000 hours are knocked off here. So really it's 4,000. And that equates to, if you're getting 2,000 hours a year, which is standard for a full-time job, then that's 2 years, whereas a standard pathway is 3 years. So on the right side, you're looking at 2 years. You have to be directly interacting and engaging with individual clients. So you'll notice on the left side, all they're concerned with is personal delivery to individual client, none of the other items. And then on there, you've got to be doing it under the direct supervision of a CFP professional, which I talked about. And instead of one or more of the elements of financial planning, you've got to be doing it all. So if you're doing all of that, then you can get there much faster, 2 years as opposed to 3. And again, you'll have access to this in your slide deck. The ethics declaration, and in order to fulfill the requirements, you've got to complete the application for CFP certification. And in there, there's a code of ethics which you learn about, particularly for those of you who are about to start in our program. You're going to learn about the code of ethics in the fundamentals class. You'll also see uh, information on it in the capstone. So you'll get it at the beginning as well as the end of the program. In that ethics discussion, if you will, there's fitness standards that apply to financial planners. And you'll see I added the fine print on there that you'll want to review the fitness standards to note that there's conduct that is unacceptable and will always bar an individual from becoming certified. What that means is if you have a felony on your record, then you wouldn't be able to be a financial planner. Says there's also conduct that is presumed to be unacceptable and would bar an individual from becoming certified unless the individual petitions the commission for consideration. So what does that mean? An example of that is bankruptcy. If you have a bankruptcy on your record, it's presumed that that makes you unfit unless you have a good reason for that. And the CFP board excuses things like medical issues. So actually, those were the 4 E's. So now let's look at what the UT Financial Planning Certificate Program has to offer. 3 objectives, 3 goals. Number 1, cover all the topics we just talked about. Number 2, give you a thorough understanding of all of the concepts, principles, and practices of financial planning. And 3, most importantly, make sure that you are going to be a competent, professional, and ethical financial planner. Our program curriculum is going to cover all of those principal knowledge topics. I mentioned earlier that there was the certification process that we go through, and we have to demonstrate that we are covering all of the areas that the CFP board expects. We go through a traditional college textbook curriculum. The textbooks may have 300 pages to 600 pages. I know the fundamentals textbook, I think has over 600 pages. I can get it, but it's on my shelf here. They're very thick textbooks, and as such, we're going through, and you will be required to go through probably 3 chapters per week for some courses. So it's very intense, and so we like to let people know right at the get-go that it's like a college level course in the amount of information that you cover. One of the big selling points for our program and why a lot of people come to the University of Texas Austin, the actual in-person or the online through this channel, is that we have real-world practitioners that are teaching the course and have been doing it for quite a while. Um, One of my jobs with being contracted through the University of Texas is hiring or vetting and hiring those instructors. And so there's people that I know the um, through the organizations that I'm in that I'll find out what their background is, how long they've been doing the profession, and then of course I interview and vet them and ask them questions as it relates to technical topics and see if they can answer it, and not just answer it, but I'm listening to see if it's a way that's clearly could be understood by a student. Our instructors have been teaching for quite a while. It's students like you who are the reason that they're here. So if they don't get good evaluations, of course, we move on from that instructor, but our instructors that we have been here for quite a while because they get great evaluations from our students. Here are the six courses that we offer. Excuse me, seven. No, yeah, that's seven. There's six of the discipline courses, and then the capstone is the one that encapsulates all the others. So one of the things that you won't see on here is the psychology of financial planning that you may remember from the previous slide, and there's another one as it relates to the uh, business side of financial planning or the ethics. Those are encompassed in classes like Fundamentals of Financial Planning, as well as Capstone, and you'll see them in others. But this is the way we lay it out. There's fundamentals, there's insurance, there's tax, investments, estate, retirement, and then Capstone. And you don't have to take them in this order. You can take them in any order that you want, except for Capstone. Capstone has to be the last one because obviously you're working with other students and putting and writing financial plans on behalf of hypothetical clients. Here's what's being offered currently. So fundamentals is coming up starting January the 21st. It'll be on Wednesdays from 6 to 9. And then the capstone, which is not necessarily going to be applicable to you all unless you've been through the other courses or you're challenging the exam, as I mentioned before. Even those who are challenging the exam that have those other disciplines, they still have to take capstone. Capstone is required for everyone. If you are going through one course per session that we have the sessions, and you saw that one session went from or goes from January 21st through April. If you're doing one each time, then it should take you a little bit less than 2 years. If you're doing two courses at a time when we do offer them, then it'll be a little less than 15 years. I always tell people in the information session, you want to be mindful of time because you're in class 3 hours a week. And then depending on how recently you've been in school or out of school, it's 6 to 9 hours of study time. And so you're looking at 9 to 12 hours a week of this commitment. And if you're doing two courses, obviously that's going to be 18 to 24 hours a week, which equates to a part-time job at that point. So you really want to evaluate whether you have the time to do this. And I always throw this as a family guy. I have a son. You want to look at the uh, commitment as it relates to your family. Is your family on board with you pursuing this as well? We want to make sure that you go through this with eyes wide open. Prerequisites, we say that we want you to have a bachelor's degree. CFP Board really requires you to have one within 5 years of passing the exam. And we'd like you to have a proficiency in college level math because obviously we're dealing with numbers. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be looking at calculus or anything like that. But what it does mean is that you'll be doing time value of money calculations and working with your financial calculator a lot, coming up with valuations for whether it's bonds, stocks, different things like that. In order to get the certificate from UT directly, you'll need to take a minimum of 5 of those 7 classes through our program. And the financial plan development, the capstone course, must be taken at the University of Texas at Austin. So what that means is you can transfer classes in. Let's say that, for instance, this next spring, you have enough time to do fundamentals, but maybe you have extra time, and so you want to do another one at the same time. You can go do an online program, for instance, and take uh, insurance and transfer that in as one of your two courses that you transfer in. When you do that, just know you'll want to get approval, not appro you'll want to get those courses checked out prior because we want to make sure that those classes, in fact, transfer in, that they have the same makeup that ours have. So we'll give you a case in point. There's a section of employee benefits. In our program, we cover that in retirement. In some other programs, they may cover employee benefits in the insurance class. And so we want to make sure that you're not missing out on any topics. So touch base with UT if you're looking at transferring anything in. And then also, in order to maintain the quality of our program, we require that students earn a B or better for transfer consideration. So if you go through an online provider and get a C in the course and try to transfer it in, I'm telling you right now that it's not going to work. You'll have to do a B or better because of the quality of our program. We don't obviously want to dilute the caliber of our students that we graduate. And of course, graduation requirements, complete all 7 courses and get a 70% or better. I always like to throw this in there so that you realize what financial calculators that you can use on the CFP board exam. It doesn't make any sense for you to go out and get a calculator to use for your classes and then get to the CFP board exam and realize, oh, it's not allowed. So this was accessed. You can see at the very bottom there, October 28th. So this is their uh, most recent calculator policy, which I've been doing this information session for I can't even tell you how many years. Same calculators, they don't really change. The most popular are the HP12C and HP12C Platinum for Hewlett Packard, and the for TI, it's usually the TI B11 Plus. I don't have many students who have the Sharp calculators. And in some of our courses, I know fundamentals and perhaps investments, we give you help on how to use those financial planning calculators and teach you how to work some of the problems. Very different notation for some of these calculators when you're doing time value of money problems. The price per course is $7.95 with the exception of capstone. And if you do them, purchase them all at once, then of course you get a bundle discount through CFP, or excuse me, through the UT's Financial Planning Certificate Program. That's going to be laid out on this other slide. So $7.95 per course. Then you've got textbooks on average. You're looking at 140. There's Money Education, which does the retirement. It's retirement and estate planning. Those are on the order of $99, if my memory serves me correctly. The investments course, I think that textbook is about $300. So that's why we have the average of, 140. If you were to pay everything for every class as is, then the total price, not bundled, you can see there. So it's up to you what works best for you, how you want to pay for it. So your approximate total cost is going to be the 59.75 or 65.45 over. Keep in mind that 2 year or 2 year period or 15-month period, depending on how fast you do it. CFP board application, that's done directly to the CFP board. You pay them 200, you pay them 925 for the exam, and that's the total cost there. Now, you'll see at the very bottom that there's exam review courses. Highly, 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 highly recommend you do exam review courses. We're going to get to the pass rates here in a little bit, but 90% of the students who, or 90% of the CFP board exam test takers, they have been through a live review. Live review is a truncated 40-hour period where they teach specifically to the test. They teach you some tricks, strategies, give you a whole bunch of problems to work. Very, very beneficial. And it's done through a number of providers. What makes our program different? Well, we focus on the practical. I shared with you earlier that I only bring in real world practitioners, people who are doing this day in and day out. And so in the uh, estate planning course, you're generally going to have somebody who writes wills and trusts. You're going to generally have a estate planning attorney, not necessarily a CFP practitioner, but someone who is an attorney. And so it's interesting because our students, they come in our program and they get to ask all of their hypothetical questions, which are not really hypothetical. They got real cases that they're getting free advice from the instructor on. So, with that in mind, estate planning, you're usually going to have a estate planning attorney. For the investments course, you're more than likely going to have a chartered financial analyst, someone who's deep in the knowledge of investments. For the tax planning course, you're generally going to have a CPA teaching that course and someone for the insurance and risk management. We generally will have people who are in the insurance profession who know the ins and outs of policies. That's one of our biggest selling points and why people come. Uh, we're committed to education, as I mentioned before. Our instructors do not stay with our program if they're not good. And we know whether they're good or not by your evaluations. I cannot underscore enough the networking and mentoring opportunities. We've had uh, classmates who've, after the program or during the program, decided to partner up and start their own financial planning practice. We've had people get hired out of our program. I get inquiries every so often. When I get those inquiries of job opportunities, I pass them directly to the university program and they'll send it out to students. So you have those opportunities. So it's definitely a good thing to be a part of. I mentioned at the beginning that you can take the classes in any order that you want. You can pay as you go or do the bundle. We have various nights that we offer the classes. This last one, I think it was Wednesday that I mentioned, but sometimes it may be Tuesday or Thursday. We do have Saturday classes during the summer. Those are more accelerated programs. Instead of 3 hours, I think it may be 4 or 5 that they're teaching on Saturdays. Multiple course offerings. And then, of course, if you're trying to get through at a certain time, but one of the classes is not fitting your schedule, then you can transfer those in. So there's a lot of flexibility. Then, of course, this is the reason why some people will go through our program is they want that University of Texas at Austin financial planning certificate with the UT seal on it. Now, of course, our A&M students, they don't care for that, but others do. I've had a number of engineers actually go through our program, do really well, but they don't necessarily make the switch to financial planning because they're just doing really well in their respective careers. And so they get the certificate and continue to do things maybe for family and friends, but they don't necessarily go beyond that.
I want to thank Ken for his time covering the program. Again, reach out to myself if you've got any questions on the program or need any support with registration. or enrollment or additional information on the program to help clarify any questions. But with that, I'll turn it over to Ken if he's got anything to follow up with before we close out tonight.
I do not.
All
Thank
right.
you all for coming. And
All right.
again, you have my contact information if you want to reach out to me.